Hello and welcome to the youth panel here at CPAC GB. I'm your chair for today and my name is Councillor Annie May-O'Neill. I'm a county, district and town councillor for Reform UK, a law student aspiring to be a barrister and with hopes to maybe one day become a member of parliament. I'm joined by the fantastic BasednBougie, a political commentator and Christian activist, and the wonderful Jaden Palmer, a 19-year-old business owner and political candidate. I entered politics in my early 20s because I no longer felt represented by government officials, career politicians, and the mainstream media who proclaim that the youth have little interest in politics. And if they do have any interest at that, they're more likely to be left-leaning. Well, I can sit before you all today, and I'm sure we all can, and say that statement couldn't be further from the truth. It pains my heart to say, but Britain is broken. But that's because we've fallen into, and Matt Goodwin says this greatly, suicidal empathy, where our kindness, our care, and our compassion and Christian morality have been taken advantage of by too many for too long, and something needs to change. From the Magna Carta in 1215 to common law and the creation of Parliament, to the invention of the steam engine, to even English breakfast tea, British culture and our values are credited around the world, and Britain is a historical pedigree. But unfortunately, the one place we're taught to downgrade our history, the one place we're taught to dampen our pride in our values and our heritage is here, our heart, Great Britain. As a young person, watching governments crumble by politicians who represent us with no passion for this country, no passion for their residents, it really shames me to say, but the next generation of politicians need to change the wheel and tackle what we've got, which is a far left establishment running our country to the ground, who hates Western civilization, who hates the idea of Christian morality, and doesn't want British people to remain our historical pedigree. I could go on about this despair of this country and what we've really led to, but I'm proud to be British. I'm proud to fly my flag, and most certainly I'm proud to be a Christian. with Jesus Christ in my heart, in everything I do. And no, it doesn't make you racist to say that, nor does it make you fascist or far right. It makes you patriotic and proud for the country that has given you the most amazing opportunities. Sadly, we've seen Britain in a decay where we've got illegal immigration with foreign men imported into our country day after day from cultures and values that believe women are second-class citizens, to two-tier policing and freedom of speech, with Lucy Connolly as a representation of that, being stripped from the exact society that created democracy and the right to debate. Then you can even go into the indoctrination, the horrific indoctrination at that, of young children's minds with left-wing ideology being pumped into their vulnerable brains in schools to believe that there's more than two genders? What? But something that affected me most was the abolition of a meritocracy. When I left A-levels, I achieved AAA stars in law, politics, government, and English, and I loved education. I applied to the most prestigious university in the country, many of whom politicians have attended, with my personal statement and my incredible grades that I fought hardly for, with my even teachers encouraging me to apply to such university. I got declined, not for my grades, because I had more than enough to be there, not for my background or my experience, because again, I had a lot of it, but for my personal statement. Was I too white British enough for the prestige Russell Group universities to allow me to get in to these universities when they're following these DEI regulations and protocols? How wrong is that? Just think about that. Young talent leaves Britain day by day by day, and we've heard some insane statistics from incredible speakers today about that. But it's because America, Australia, Europe, and even the Middle East provides more opportunities for those with British heritage than our own country. Something is wrong, but it's being seen now by the youth. And I hope and I pray that the next generation of politicians, like myself and these incredible people today on today's panel, can tackle this left-wing establishment and to walk into the footsteps of historic politicians, and I like to call them guardians, like Winston Churchill, Margaret Thatcher, and sadly now, the wonderful heroine Anne Widdecombe. So on that note, I'm going to take it to our panel and follow what the great Charlie Kirk said. We were once a great country, and we will fight until we make Britain great again. So let's go to our first panellist. Based, you are known to be a Christian activist and go into what I would like to call the lion's den of these leftist, Marxist, socialist protests. Why do you do what you do, and what inspired you?
It actually started off with my previous line of work, so I can't say too much about where I was working, but it basically required me to work with a lot of migrants. And prior to this job, I used to have a very liberal view of migration for two reasons. The first reason is that obviously my parents migrated here, and they're the perfect example of people who migrate, integrate, love the country, work extremely hard. And not only that, when you go into the school camps, that's what I call them, it's basically indoctrination camps, you're basically taught that migration is good, diversity is our strength, look around you, we're all multicultural, is all a good thing. It wasn't until I started to work at this job that there were so many red flags. I would say the first pink flag was the fact that a lot of these people weren't coming from war-torn countries. For example, most of them were coming from places like Eritrea and Somalia, and a lot of them were Kurdish. There's no war in these areas. And for the people who were actually coming from war-torn countries, they kept going on holiday to the countries they were actually seeking asylum from. So for instance, there was a Ukrainian refugee, I'll never forget this. She traveled all the way to Ukraine, even though she had a job interview, because she had a doctor's appointment in Ukraine. Make that make sense. She's seeking asylum, but she traveled to the country that she was seeking asylum from for a doctor's appointment. It was absurd to me. Then the amber flag for me was where these people were coming from and why the neighboring countries didn't want to house them. Now, this is not me saying people don't have a right to migrate. However, the neighboring countries, whether it's the UAE, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Turkey, they're very thriving nations. And I started to notice, hold on, migration is a good thing, but how come European countries are the only countries that are forced and force-fed this multiculturalism nonsense? It was very odd to me. And the last thing as well was the red flag, I would say, was the resistance that they had towards British culture. You know, the genesis of British culture and the British Empire has always been centered around working hard and building. Absolutely. Build. And a lot of these people weren't willing to build. They were sitting on benefits for 20 years. They hadn't learned English for 10 years. They weren't willing to work. And when they were working illegally, working cash in hand. And I just thought to myself, this is not how we create function in society. Something is wrong here. And I would say the white flag where I completely had to surrender my curiosity and finally start to act was when I realized that all the people who were pointing out these things online and actually stating the truth about what I was seeing in real life, they were called far-right neo-Nazis. I mean, imagine comparing someone's curiosity to why a Somalian hasn't learned English for 20 years to Hitler, who killed 6 million Jewish people. It made absolutely no sense. So that's when I picked up my phone, I picked up my microphone, I started to speak about these issues just so that I can say, listen, I'm a black woman and I can see this too. It doesn't make me a fascist. And I also came across a platform called London by Londoners, which you guys should all be following all on Instagram and Facebook. They helped me as well, basically improve my professionalism in the journalism field. But I think the foundation of everything that I do has always been Christianity. Christianity has not only been my foundation, but it has been the foundation of this country. I mean, just small things like queuing up and waiting your turn and saying please and thank you, to even big things like creating high-rise buildings and the tech industry and going into other countries and modernizing them the way the British Empire did. I know a lot of people like to demonize the British Empire, but I think it was a much better force for good than it was for bad. These are all Christian. These are all rooted in Christian values. Christianity has done so much good for the world because it is the most forward-thinking, innovative, progressive ideology that is out there. And it blows my mind that the ideologies that we've seen time and time again that crush societies and draw so much blood and cause so much chaos and confusion are the ones that are being promoted in the country that literally gave me an opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, my parents came from Congo. Had I been raised in Congo, my future would have looked a lot different. So, that's how I started. It was basically just my parents from a young age taught me to be very patriotic and just noticing a lot of the odd behavior that was going on and how the image of migration that was being painted in the news was completely different to what I was seeing in real life.
Oh, Base, you are absolute inspiration.
Thank you
so
so
many
much.
girls out there. You really are.
Thank you so much. So are you.
So now let's go to incredible Jayden. You were a political candidate, you're only 19. What really inspired you to put your head above the parapet and run for local elections and reform? But also, you're a business owner, and what do you believe that the government and government policies have done so far to affect your business?
Well, listen, as a young business owner, I've owned my own business for quite several years now. And it was the main reason I wanted to get into politics, really, is because the strain that at the time the Conservative government put on my local business, and then Labour even more so, with the business tax and taxes in general. And I went to go and speak to my friends about this, around the struggles I was having in running my own business financially. I mean, I was very passionate about it, but at the end of the day, you do need to make a profit. And then that's when I really started to look into politics, because it is what influences everything at the end of the day. Our daily lives, politics, and the politicians are directly, they influence everything. So I looked at every party, objectively. The Green Party even, the Conservatives, Reform. And for context, my parents aren't political. My family doesn't have a political background whatsoever. I don't believe I was influenced by my surroundings. I looked at Reform and what Reform were proposing, and quite simply, it made the most logical sense. The Conservatives, they were so passionate about protecting these long-standing institutions that they went away with their true right-wing policies. The 14 years of lies. Now, I don't want to hurt the Conservatives too much here, but to say that Reform really did speak to me. Then I went back to my friends. Guys, I like Reform UK. They seem, this makes sense. They want to lower tax, lower immigration, cut the welfare bill. They're not scared to upset a few people and make the practical decisions needed for this country. What do you mean you like Reform UK? You're not white. You know, it was so ironic, the amount of people who told me I can't support Reform UK because I'm not white. I mean, this is definitively, it was racism against me. You know, I couldn't believe it. And then I was like, okay, fine, maybe I need to get a better set of friends. So then, yeah, I went about it and I was like, okay, I want to speak about this online. I want to take this to social media. I've been criticizing this privately for a couple of months now. I should be the one to actually take this and take, put my money where my mouth is, essentially. I did so, and I had a very positive response of lots of young people who feel exactly the same way as I do, but are too scared to say it out loud, are too scared by the public perception of how being right-wing sounds, how being, supporting Reform UK sounds. And I was like, okay, that's what I want to focus on. I want to make sure young people feel comfortable expressing their views, online, in person, left or right. You should have the freedom of speech to express your opinion. So I carried on social media for a couple months, speaking about the British Empire, how I feel it was one of the best empires in the world. The Italians are proud of the Romans. We should be able to be proud of our own empire. We did a lot of good. I talked about British culture, how deep it runs, not in just this country, but every single country in the world. And then I kept going until I wanted to become in an elected position, to be a part of council, to make a real difference. And I have to say, the difference between online politics and going and knocking on door after door is massive. And I have great respect for anyone who does it, regardless of your political standing. I mean, especially with me, with Reform, I had a lot of fun. But you knock on door after door, you get called a Nazi, a little hit here and there, but it was great. I think ultimately the main thing that inspired me was I wanted young people to speak out, and I wanted young people to feel free to express their own opinions online. And, even at my university, universities are quite a left-wing place generally. I founded and I am the president of the Reform Society at Exeter. And again, the same thing. Thank you. And again, I saw the same thing. It was just so many young people scared to speak out, scared to say, I support reform, scared to say, I'm right-wing. And I'm very proud to give people a platform at Exeter University and online to say, I support Reform UK or I'm right-wing, because I think that is absolutely essential to our political landscape, and it's what I want to continue to do in the future as well.
Oh, well, Jayden, that's fantastic. Wow. I believe you've accumulated between both of you millions and millions of views. And I mean, obviously, fantastic speakers. You know, I think something we've lost, and like Jayden's just been saying, is the passion to speak out for what you believe in. Because sadly, the left side of politics has demonised it for too long. We've seen with the horrific attacks on politicians that anybody that has a differentiating opinion, you're demonised for that. How dangerous is that to our freedom of speech? And people like Keir Starmer, people like Zach Poplinski, oh, at least I call him that anyway, Zach Polinsky, you know, they portray this image of reform and even conservatives as these far-right thugs who don't know what they're talking about. But that puts people like me in danger, that puts people like Based in danger, and that puts people like Jayden in danger, who want to stand up and actually believe in the values that they have. And I mean, obviously, something I'm really proud of is being a Christian, but seeing our Christian faith slowly decay from society really does open your eyes to a lot of things. You wonder why crime is up decade after decade after decade, and morality and humanity is down, and events are now just bypassed. It's because we've lacked our faith. And I mean, Base, you're a Christian activist. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, so I'm someone where, weirdly enough, I never really get nervous. I'm not really a shy person. I think social anxiety hates to see me coming. But for me, it's more so a thing of, like I said, Christianity has always been my foundation. And when you come to that understanding that this life is so temporary and is literally just a split second compared to the eternal life that we will have with Christ or with Satan in hell, you become less fearful of people's opinion. You become less fearful of people's judgment.
Absolutely.
And even if someone does place you into harm, I mean, it's not a good thing. We've experienced a lot of losses, whether it's Anne or whether it's Charlie Kirk. At the end of the day, what it actually does, it draws people more to the right, because it makes people realize, wait, this left that's always talking about peace and unity, they're actually quite violent.
Absolutely.
I actually don't want anything to do with that. And that was my realization when I realized all of my friends who were somewhat left-leaning and were all about black pride, how quick they were to turn against me when I finally decided to become more conservative and more Christian. So I think it's just for anyone who may be fearful to tell the truth, I just want to remind you that this life is so temporary. Like, it does not even matter. What you should be looking towards is the life with Christ. And I think, like in the Greek word, the term Christian actually means Christ eon, which means to be Christ-like. Christ was a truth teller. He didn't treat the truth like it was an option. He treated it like it was a duty. You have to tell the truth. So yeah, I'm sorry to waffle.
No, amen to that. Absolutely. And Jayden, really same thing for you. You spoke about getting hate comments and whatnot. How do you combat that as a young influencer? And really, you know, why do you continue on? And are you not stopped by these comments?
I like them. I always have a good laugh with my friends and family reading through the hateful comments. All these people who have taken their time out of their lives to express such hate towards a 19-year-old.
I know.
You know, I find it really funny. And, you know, in this industry, you do have to have a bit of a thick skin. And, you know, if you don't laugh, you'll cry, almost.
Absolutely, yeah.
But, you know, like I said, it's very much for me, I'm very passionate about the broader picture.
Yeah.
Around the broader mission. We need more young people in politics. Because at the end of the day, even with my business, all these decisions affecting my business and young people getting into business were politicians 3 or 4 times my age dictating the future that ultimately we're all going to inherit. It made no sense whatsoever. I want to encourage all young people across the left or the right, speak up for your beliefs, speak up for your experiences, say your experiences, go on social media. If I never waited for anyone to say I was experienced enough or old enough to own a business or to be an elected candidate either. You need to take the jump. And I think all young people should have their 2 cents in the political standing of today's world.
Absolutely, Jayden. And how incredible. How absolutely incredible. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. So thank you so much to my amazing panellists, BasednBougie, Jaden Palmer. Thank you to the incredible audience today. And from me, Councillor Annie May, God bless. Thank you.